Environmental Awareness Campaign by Isabella Sells, Alternative Energy. Why is the Earth sweating? Well, of course it's not physically sweating, but why is the Earth overheating? Well, that's because of global warming. Let's ask some basic questions about global warming. What is global warming? What are the causes of global warming? What are the effects of global warming? What is the solution to global warming? And how can we prevent global warming? Let's address the first question. What is global warming? Global warming is the gradual increase in the average temperature of the Earth's atmosphere. Danger of global warming. Dangers of global warming are trapped heat in atmosphere, also called the greenhouse effect, rising temperature, glaciers melting, natural disasters, animals moving habitat, unbalanced weather pattern, and overall threat to life. Warning: if we don't stop it now, we may not be able to fix it again. What is the greenhouse effect? The greenhouse effect is the trapping of the sun's warmth in a planet's lower atmosphere. Atmosphere is the thin layer of gases that cloak and protect the planet. The excessive carbon dioxide level in the atmosphere can trap the sun's radiation that the planet receives like an agricultural greenhouse vinyl cover, preventing its natural reflection and release back out to the space. The causes of greenhouse effect. What are the causes of the greenhouse effect? The causes are human/animal output of CO2, deforestation, and fossil fuel consumption. CO2 emission equal GHG, greenhouse gases. It can be shown on this graph that drastic CO2 emissions increase is the biggest cause of global warming. It can also be seen that there have been drastic global temperature increases in the recent years. It is shown that there is a big CO2 gap from negative 0.8 to 1 in just 120 years. There is also a global temperature gap from negative 0.35 to 0.9 in 120 years. Throughout each year, there are 29 billion tons of CO2 emissions. And now, the current CO2 levels are higher than they've been in 15 million years. And now, 43% of all CO2 emissions remains in the atmosphere, creating the greenhouse effect. Human/animal output of CO2. Human and animal population growth contributes towards CO2 emission increase by exhaling 10 times more CO2 than inhaling. The current world population is 7 billion and is estimated to be 11 billion by the year 2100. Population in the world is currently growing at a rate of 1.8% per year, which equals to about 80 million per year. However, the total CO2 emission from humans' natural breathing comprises only a small percentage, less than 3%, of all greenhouse gases. Deforestation. Trees consume a large amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere through photosynthesis. Theoretically, if we plant trees to grow as fast as the population growth, the carbon dioxide cycle will be balanced. However, the deforestation, the removal of trees, is increasing at the rate of 1.5 acres per second, according to FAO, United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization. Reforestation, planting of trees, can help reducing the concentration of CO2 level in the atmosphere at about 17%. CO2 emission caused by fossil fuel consumption. 87% of all human-produced CO2 emission comes from the burning of fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are formed in the earth from dead plants or animals from the Carboniferous period, approximately 360 to 286 million years ago. Coal, oil, or natural gas are examples of fossil fuels that are commonly used. Cars and factories consume fossil fuels and emit carbon dioxide and other gases into the atmosphere as a result. The excess of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is harmful to living things and threatens human condition. Since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, the CO2 emission caused by the fossil fuel consumption has increased by 40%. Power plants in US only produce 30% of all greenhouse gases in the world. Alternative energy is our solution. What is alternative energy? Well, alternative energy is the best way to reduce CO2 emission, and it's the best way to replace fossil fuel consumption. But what is it? What are the different kinds of alternative energy? How does alternative energy affect the nation, globe, and local community? Well, let's address the first question. What is alternative energy? Alternative energy, or renewable energy sources, are the different ways to produce energy without the use of fossil fuels, so that we can try to prevent further harm of the earth. Types of alternative energy. The types of alternative energy are hydroelectric power at 56%, wind power at 28%, biomass energy at 12%, geothermal energy at 3%, and solar power at 1%. This data is based on 2014 ELA. Hydroelectric energy. Hydroelectricity refers to the conversion of energy from flowing water into electricity. In 2015, hydropower generated 16.6% of the world's total electricity and 70% of all alternative energy. Hydropower is produced in 150 out of 195 countries. Hydroelectric power generates about 56% of U.S. alternative energy, which equals to 10% of total U.S. energy. Hydropower makes up 26% of California's alternative energy sources. Wind power. Wind power is the use of airflow through wind turbines to power electricity generators. Wind is an inexpensive source of electricity, which makes it pretty popular. Wind power generates 18% of total world's alternative energy. It provides electricity generation equivalent to 14 nuclear power plants or 52 coal plants in the U.S. Wind power makes up 28% of U.S. alternative energy use. California's wind power makes up 18% of its total alternative energy sources. Biomass energy. Biomass is a renewable energy source not only because the energy in it comes from the sun, but also because biomass can regrow over a relatively short period of time, compared with the hundreds of millions of years that it took for fossil fuels to form. Through the process of photosynthesis, chlorophyll in plants capture the sun's energy by converting carbon dioxide from the air and water from the ground into carbohydrates, complex compounds composed of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. When these carbohydrates are burned, they turn back into carbon dioxide and water and release the energy they captured from the sun. Biomass takes up 10% of global energy use, 12% of U.S. alternative energy in 2014, 26% biomass, and 22% high-tech biofuels in 2016. 27% of the California alternative energy, and it's also the fastest growing alternative energy out there. Geothermal. Geothermal energy is the heat from the earth. It's clean and sustainable. Resources of geothermal energy range from the shallow ground to hot water and hot rock found a few miles beneath the Earth's surface, and down even deeper to the extremely high temperatures of molten rock called magma. In total, globally, there are about 12,000 MW in the pipeline and about 30,000 MW of geothermal resources under development. It takes up 3% of U.S. alternative energy and 12% of California alternative energy. Solar energy. Solar power uses the sun's energy to produce electricity. Solar power cannot generate electricity at night because there's no sun available to provide it electricity. It is also less effective in overcast conditions. 3.2% of U.S. energy is solar, making up 1% of alternative energy. California, the Golden State, produces 4% of its alternative energy from solar power. Global, national, and local view. Globally, 12% of energy worldwide is alternative energy, and there is an estimated 18% of alternative energy used in 2020. Nationally, the U.S. energy is 13.44% of alternative energy, and 86.56% of U.S. energy still depends on fossil fuels. Locally, California, 10% of energy worldwide is alternative energy, and there's an average 6.5% growth every year. Ways to help. Stop using electricity? No, that can't be the answer. Instead of that, we should use alternative energy. The ways that you can help would be to drive electric cars, use solar panels for home, use biomass fuels for cooking, and use a watermill if running water is nearby. You could also become an environmental steward. You can convince others to use alternative energy and make other people aware of the problem. Future impact. As you can see here, fossil fuels are concentrated, limited, expensive, and unsustainable. Meanwhile, alternative energy is local, abundant, inexpensive, and sustainable. As you can see below that, the goal for alternative energy is to get from the current 2016 23% to 26% in 2020. On the right side of the screen, you can also see the system in which we can work together to create a better planet. You can change your energy source to help the planet. An advocate group can educate people so that they can learn about this problem. Inventors, they can create the energy technology needed, and policymakers can support and encourage people. If communities and nations work together like this, we can all make a better planet. Sources. There's also a quote listed on this page from IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. In order to ensure planetary habitability for today's and future generations, we urgently need to build societies powered by safe, affordable, and sustainable energy. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Remember to keep on using alternative energy. You can change the planet, and you can affect the Earth.